This presentation is about effective technology for special education students in the 8th grade science classroom. Students have specific learning styles that help them to be successful in the classroom. Students that fall under the special education umbrella are no different. These students have IEPs that identify the areas of concern and possibly offer effective ways to teach these students. Some of these ways are direct teach instruction for the tactile, kinesthetic, social learners, video instruction for the visual learners, and podcast instruction for audio learners. The purpose of this quantitative action research study is to determine if there is significance among student assessment scores when it comes to the use of direct teach instruction, video instruction, or podcast instruction within the 8th grade special education population in science classrooms at New Caney Middle School. I am looking to see which teaching method would be the most help to the 8th grade special education students at NCMS. This action research study has a purposeful, non-random sample. All 8th grade students at New Caney Middle School have participated in the study, as this was action research and I did nothing different than I would normally do in my classroom. However, all 8th grade students with special needs in the general education science classroom is the population in which data was collected and analyzed to determine the results of this study. At the conclusion of this quantitative study, I aim to answer the following research question. Are 8th grade special education students at New Caney Middle School more likely to have an increase in academic achievement in science by participating in direct teach instruction, video instruction, or podcast instruction? I believe, due to the nature of the teaching methods used and the way listening to a podcast will require students to really listen and focus, student achievement within my special education population will increase with the use of podcasting in the classroom. Here are the variables that we'll be looking at in this study. My independent categorical variable was the teaching methods of direct teach, videos, podcasts, and my dependent quantitative variable was student achievement. When it comes to the research design of this study was a quantitative intervention action research study. This was an intervention research study in that I was focusing on finding significance between a teaching method and the impact each method had on academic achievement of 8th grade special education students at NCMS. This was also an action research study in the way that the study was conducted. My 8th grade teaching partner and I virtually taught the lessons the exact same way over the course of 3 days, and data was immediately collected using the exact same achievement test. Students learned about causes of day, night, and seasons via video instruction, the lunar cycle by direct teach instruction, and ocean tides via podcast instruction with the help of a graphic organizer. For this intervention action research study, our independent variable, the 3 teaching methods, will be looked at for significance by collecting quantitative data from 3 different achievement tests or post-assessment, our dependent variable. These achievement tests will be created using questions taken directly from released 8th grade Science Star tests from previous state assessments issued by the Texas Education Agency, with the exception of 2 questions on our ocean tides test. All questions on the achievement test will be multiple choice with 4 answer choices. These achievement tests will be administered and automatically graded through our learning management system Canvas on student district-issued Chromebooks. In the event a student does not have a Chromebook, a paper version of the assessment will be administered. The data collected will be raw. Students will complete the assessments based on what they learned that day, based off of a particular teaching method without the use of any resources on the assessment. Students will not be allowed to use their notes on these assessments. Next, I will briefly show you the questions that were administered for each teaching method. When it came to the collection of data, students were in their normal classrooms following all normal classroom procedures. Since this was action research and it was taking place in the classroom, where nothing different is occurring than their normal classroom procedures, students were unaware that they were taking part in a study to determine the effectiveness of video instruction, direct teach instruction, and podcast instruction. This was to help ensure that we would have the most raw data possible. All students also have prior experience with each of these methods. Students were not doing anything different than they would in a normal class, and consent was not needed for this project due to the nature of action research taking place, for which the purpose was to evaluate teaching practices in the science classroom. At the conclusion of our unit on the universe, we moved into Earth and Moon systems. In this unit, students learned about causes of day and night and seasons, the lunar cycle, and the causes of ocean tides. Below, you will find the complete outline of events that was followed over the course of the 3-day study. Basically, all 3 days had an essential question that we aimed to answer. Students then moved into the method of teaching, and then students moved into their post-assessment or the achievement test that was used to gain data based on our teaching methods. Here's the raw data table that was collected for each of the teaching methods administered. For STAR accountability purposes, the colors were chosen by me and not the state of Texas. Red meant the student was unsatisfactory. Yellow meant they approached grade level, which was also satisfactory. Blue was meets grade level or college ready. And green means they exceeded the grade level and they earned commended. Based on the data table, one could make the assumption that since podcast instruction had the most passing scores, that it has the most significance when it comes to special education students. In order to see if there was significance among our teaching methods, I performed an ANOVA test in StatCrunch using the raw data in the color-coded chart. I ran the test at an alpha of 0.05, and below you will be able to see the statistics and the ANOVA results. As we can see, we have a p-value of 0.0351. Since our p-value is less than our alpha of 0.05, we have significance and therefore we reject the null hypothesis. This suggests that overall there is significance in the teaching methods used in 8th grade science classrooms among the special education population at New Caney Middle School. The ANOVA test allowed us to see that there was significance among our teaching methods. Since we know that there is significance, we now need to determine which teaching method holds the most significance within the special education population of 8th grade science students at New Caney Middle School. To determine which of the 3 teaching methods was the most statistically significant, I performed a Tukey range or Tukey HSD test at an alpha of 0.05. Below you will see the results of that test. A statistical difference cannot be determined when comparing videos to direct teach and podcast. However, a statistical difference can be determined from direct teach and podcast. The p-value of this analysis of 0.0446 is less than the significance interval, our alpha, of 0.05, indicating that podcasts pose a statistical difference. Since podcasts have a p-value of 0.0446, which is less than the alpha of 0.05, we have significance and we reject the null hypothesis. Podcasts do in fact have the greatest statistical significance when it comes to student achievement among the 8th grade special education population at New Caney Middle School in the science classroom. This study is not without its limitations. One threat to the validity of this study is due to collector bias. Since this study took place in 2 classrooms with 2 different teachers, different conversations with students may have taken place between the lecture time and assessment time. A second threat is the sample size. Having a sample of only 13 special needs students could give us an incomplete picture of what a larger sample size could potentially give us. Another threat to the validity of this study could be student conversations with other students in different class periods. Mortality is another threat to the validity of this study. Students could be absent on one of the days of the study and therefore may not have had adequate time to participate in the appropriate teaching method before completing their assessment. Students could also be pulled to the office or even get caught in a fire drill or lockdown drill. Another threat to the validity of this study is a language barrier. Several students in this study are not only special needs, but they're English language learners as well. This language barrier could make participating in all three lecture methods difficult to understand. Lastly, student attitude, effort, and care for the content could play a part in the validity of this study. If a student has no interest in what they are learning, they may not perform to their fullest potential on their achievement tests. Throughout the course of the study, the following research question was to be answered. Are 8th grade special education students at New Caney Middle School more likely to have an increase in academic achievement in science by participating in direct teach instruction, video instruction, or podcast instruction? At the conclusion of this study, the results showed there was significance when it comes to the assessment scores of students with special needs in the science classroom and podcast instruction with a p-value of 0.0446. Since our p-value was less than our testing alpha of 0.05, there was significance between student assessment scores and podcast instruction. Since students were to listen to an audio podcast and complete their own notes with the aid of a graphic organizer, students weren't able to copy notes word for word. They were forced to put what they hear into their own words. This is key when having students comprehend content. Students understand the content more when they have to make it their own and make their own connections and think critically about what it is they're supposed to put in their notes. When students make their own connections, they are able to better comprehend the content and then truly begin the process of mastering that content. Based on the results of this study, there is a connection with the use of podcasts by students with special needs and higher achievement scores in the 8th grade science classroom. It is recommended that 8th grade science teachers continue to implement podcasts in the classroom and track the data collected from assessments. In order to make these results more significant, additional studies need to be conducted to find similar trends in other schools, grade levels, and subjects. Based on the results of this study, I highly recommend that science teachers in grades 6 and 7 at New Caney Middle School implement their own study similar to the one to see if students with special needs in their science classrooms have similar results. If we were shown that podcasts have similar significance in those science classrooms, it would then be recommended that other core teachers at New Caney Middle School also implement a similar study to see if the significance of podcasts is present in their classrooms as well. Due to the sample size of this action research study and the fact that each year there is a new set of special education students, we cannot generalize these results gained. We have to test and retest using larger sample sizes each school year. Thank you so much for listening to this review of my research project, and I hope you go out and you do something similar like this in your own classrooms. Thank you.